This street is the storytelling heart of Disney California Adventure. It is here when you first walk in when they set the tone of exactly where you're at and what adventure you're going to live. And right now that adventure is toned to fall. Let's go window by window, shop by shop, and break down all the different Halloween stories that we're seeing through the art of design and whatever we can borrow for our own Halloween decoration. And since Disney has got started so early, it gives us a little bit of time to think about how we can use some of these ideas for our own displays. Now this name borrowing from the Los Angeles neighborhood that was frequented by Walt, but also a lot of the artists from the ink and paint department from nearby Hyperion, which is why this bridge that the monorail goes over is the Hyperion Bridge, just kind of tying together these LA elements from this time period, but set on Buena Vista Street. And I know I say it wrong, but I'd like to hear you say Louisville or New Orleans properly. It's just not where I'm from, and it's not my accent. We all have a way of saying things from wherever our home is. The Atwater Ink and Paint window maybe is the best one. There are so many great storytelling pieces in here. Let's break down a couple of my favorite. First, there's the crystal skull sitting on top of the books. Again, using books to create height. But if you look at this painting in the very bottom, you'll see that the skull is a prop that's been used for the art students to practice working on their anatomy skills, which is always a big part of learning how to become an artist. You have to learn how to draw people from the inside out, which gives us double play on the skeleton sitting in the corner. Here it feels Halloween, but in an art studio where students are learning how to illustrate, there's normally always a skeleton hanging out somewhere for, again, some of those early anatomy lessons. But then the fun foreshadowing of there being a painting of the Headless Horseman who will in just days be sitting directly across the street. And then speaking of across the street, there's this awesome charcoal illustration of the very top of Carthay Circle, but with a Halloween moon and bat flying over it. One could say that might be the giant bat that's over on the Hyperion Bridge when you first come into the park. This window has great storytelling all year long, because here you see a sculpture of the storyteller's statue, almost maybe setting up the idea that someone here was the sculptor for the statue at the end of the street, or maybe in reverse order, they're making a statue of the statue down the street as one of their art projects. Either way, the stories here are open-ended enough to where you get to decide what exactly the story they're telling is, because it all exists in your imagination. We also see lots of phantasmic character studies and a fine assortment, of course, of Haunted Mansion merchandise, which I'm assuming is sold inside. And then, just because it's cool, check out this old school model of Pluto. Absolutely love this thing. So if you could indeed go up to the second floor and take art lessons, it looks like you would probably be in pretty good hands with a couple of these names of the instructors. I would take a class with Davis or Kimball any day of the week. As we move over to Julius Katz and Sons, a early 1920s watch repair and kind of emerging electronics store, we don't see a ton of decoration, just a little something here or there, which might be kind of a cool way to think about doing some bookcases at home, if that suits your fancy, with just a couple of these old school black cats that I absolutely adore, the stacking pumpkins and black cats, which are cool. But to me, the star of the show here are these old school, I don't know if they're lamps or bird cages that they put a pumpkin inside of. And I just think that is a really cool idea of, can you find an old school bird cage or buy a cheap bird cage, and what can you put in it that creates a cool Halloween juxtaposition? Plastic bats, fill it full of rubber snakes, put a pumpkin inside of it. It's just the idea of taking two different items that each have a little bit of different symbolism, and when you put them together, it tells a whole new story. It's a very inexpensive but creative way to just make something that makes people stop and go, what is the point looking at, which is always an indication of great art. The Julius Katz windows has a handful of old school nostalgia that I love. Let's start with the back wall. The old school vintage silhouette of the witch on the broomstick with the black cat with that famous arch back riding on the tail of a broomstick. Just classic Halloween iconography. Then this bunting that goes across the front of the window. Love the black cat, the little walking pumpkin, and this owl, as well as the bat with the really kind of crappy star and moon. Fantastic. And for all the old skate rats, doesn't this old school cutout Halloween mask remind you of the original Rob Roscop decks back in the Santa Cruz days? We see another black cat, old school paper mask, as well as an owl and another black cat. I enjoyed the owl on top of the pumpkin. There's just a little bit of Halloween spruced in here to give it life, but to not overpower it, which is kind of a great example of it just takes a couple of pieces to sit around your bookshelves, your desk, your office, your living room. It doesn't take a ton of stuff to set the vibe. But where this works is a lot of matching colors. Pretty much all of these windows tonight have relied on orange and black. Picking up items, even if you collect them over different years and different locations, if you find a core theme like all birds, all owls, all cats, it'll always match. But then again, you can always find things that are always the similar colorway. So it doesn't matter what it is, but the through line would be that they all match each other through the colorway that you desire. There's something about the human brain where we enjoy symmetry and like things. Where Halloween decorations goes wrong is when people just throw literally everything at the wall. And that could be either every kind of theme or every kind of color. But if you stay within one theme, or on the inverse, stay within one color, you'll always be safe. And of course, we knew Julius Katz would get into the Halloween spirit when he has a black cat on the insignia on his front window. Now you'll notice these windows here at the 5 and Dime have a lot of product in them, a lot of story, a lot of detail, and they're very, very handcrafted. When we go next door, it's not laziness with the windows being so minimal, it's just a different kind of store that tells a different kind of story. We're next door at Eli and Company, it's more of a department store. Think New York City during Christmas with more sophisticated displays that obviously a mom and pop outfit wouldn't do, but a corporation would. So really, it comes down to storytelling. Why one set of windows would be overly complicated and have tons of stuff in them, and then the next one would be simplified and animated. Neither one is right or neither one is wrong. It's what matches the story they're trying to tell. And really, that's the fun part of each one of these windows, is how they accentuate the story that that location is supposed to be telling you. That's why the windows on Main Street and Buena Vista are the best in the parks. It's where commercialism and art kind of cross in this interesting intersection that I absolutely adore. Yes, all these windows are trying to sell you something, but they're also trying to sell you the idea that this place is real. The 5 and Dime with its various different types of merchandise, or the family-owned shops with a very specific niche that their shop serves, or the community art space, or the candy shop. Each one is an extension of what's happening on the inside. Just like any real small town USA, each shop serves a specific purpose for its community, and does the same here with how it makes you feel when you walk past it. And here in Old Hollywood, you feel the same way with decorations specific to the time that this street is supposed to represent, if you can allow yourself to ignore that all the merchandise is absolutely brand new and fits into today's timeline. But the story around it, that's the story of early 1920s California. This window is doing the job of telling the story of encapsulating a garment store, or probably like custom sewing shop in the 1923 era that Buena Vista Street is supposed to represent. You can see there's the Instant Sally's with the sweet retail price of 15 cents. But you also notice that the Halloween masks that are draped around are the old paper cutout ones that would be more to the era in which the store and the storytelling is supposed to represent. There's also a couple of more old school signs that don't have the modern fonts or typography or illustration that we would expect. It definitely has a more simplified design nature to it, keeping it more in this time period. But probably my favorite detail are the old patterns. You can see that there's a couple of set of Halloween patterns where if this were a real store from this time period, you would be able to come in, buy the patterns, and make your own Halloween costumes at home, which sadly isn't a thing too much anymore, as there's party cities and all these different places like Spirit Halloween. You know, it's just so easy and affordable to buy something off the shelf. Although I would say people do get excited when they see somebody out in a good homemade costume. This window calls back to that time period. Now let me show you a Disneyland decorating secret. If you've ever worked in retail and you had to do retail window displays, you know how incredibly hard it is to work inside of a window. Well, Disney has made this incredibly easy with their window display artists, because every one of the display windows that you'll see, they all open out to the street. So as you can see, these hinges here on the window, and then over here is the little handle. Right here is where the key goes, where they can just simply open the window out this way. So instead of trying to design inside this incredibly small space, so the display artist stands where I'm at and they don't have to stand in there. Therefore making this like a open workspace where they can have all their materials out here on the sidewalk in a cart, vacuum it all out, and then do their work. And when they're done, close the window, lock it up, and move on down the road. That is such an incredible time-saving device. Because if you've worked in retail and had to do it inside of the window, like I had to long time ago, it is very difficult. The next window moves over to a basic 5 and dime atmosphere. Lots of different consumer goods, obviously mixed in with modern day merchandise. But what I love about this display is they use vertical stacking for storytelling. You can see the pumpkin up here at the top with the fall harvest behind it, as well as the apple pie, and then down on the bottom, the orange Halloween decorations that are all stacked up. But this is a good example that if you have a big tree in your yard or maybe an empty wall at the front of your house, using a backdrop and going vertical is a great way to get all your decorations to tell a story. A lot of times people sprinkle stuff all throughout their front yard, thinking of their Halloween decorations as a horizontal movement. But when you stack things vertically, you have the ability to tell a lot more story in one spot. So maybe this year, think about putting them all together in a vertical display and tell me if it doesn't look a little bit more powerful than things kind of sprinkled all across the front lawn. In our third window, we see more of the vintage old signs, but we also see a wide collection of things that clearly weren't bought at the exact same time, showing that having a well-rounded collection of different Halloween knickknacks, when placed together thematically, can make for a really awesome display. I love these playing cards, kind of tarot cards, and that one references 33, a very familiar Disneyland number, as well as the old wooden toys, showing that if you just take a lot of your favorite Halloween things, place them together accordingly, keeping obviously similar colors so that it doesn't get too crazy or obnoxious, but keeping a lot of different items in the same tone can make an amazing display, and one that tells a story, showing all of your different Halloween pieces that you've collected over the years, which is kind of cool because each piece probably tells a different story of a different place and time you were at when you saw something spooky and it spoke to you. I love this pipe cleaner bunting over here on the side. Very homemade, very vintage looking. Disney uses old books a lot as props or thrones to put their displays on, as well as just a bunch of old boxes. Not only giving this the 5 and dime vibe of yesteryear, but allowing them to create those vertical sight lines to make the window look a lot more active than what it is. So if you're doing an interior display, just grab some old books, place them accordingly, and use those as your stages to create different levels of height. Trolley Treats shows us that we can find very affordable materials and tell whatever story we want, and most importantly, at whatever scale we want, if we just use some imagination and look at the world as our Lego to build whatever creative piece we want to build. Trolley Treats shows an interesting way to decorate where you could do something that's well within budget by using candy as your decorative element to tell a story around a couple of smaller props, like this headstone of a Grim Reaper type character with angel wings, or this really cool old silo that has a pumpkin on top of it. Or is it a grain mill? Or not really sure what it is, but it just looks cool. And using candy that obviously you would have to cover with something that would seal it and keep it from attracting bugs. But candy as a storytelling device over here creates not only an exciting display that people have been coming by and staring at all night, but in the case of Trolley Treats, it tells the story of the shop that's inside. But you don't have to have a candy shop to use candy to tell your Halloween story. Think of it as a Halloween-inspired Lego where you can build whatever your heart desires and combine it with whatever little props and knickknacks maybe you've collected over the years. But what helps sell this one is the rolling hills backdrop with just a little bit of decoration in it. And they've also taken some old dead tree branches and put them in there as well, because at this scale, the tree branches actually look like trees. I will say though, I've seen this window look much better in years past, but still a fun little decorative tip on how you can put together different materials to tell whatever Halloween story you want to tell. And I don't know if it's because of the placement of this window, but I think this window alone has attracted more attention than any other window tonight. Well friends, that's all the stores, all the windows. I hope you had a great time looking at the Halloween design, and I'm here for it. If they say it's fall, I'm going with it's fall. I know it's earlier than when we were kids, but what are you gonna do? It's more time to celebrate everything we love. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you.